Hey, KU fans, welcome back to another episode of the KU Sports Hour here at KUsports.com. I'm your host, Matt Tate, and today we're coming at you again with audio, with video, and as we discussed before we hit record, with some pretty killer backgrounds. Benton, you want to talk about those curtains back there? Give us a little insight.
Yeah, I don't know where these curtains were purchased. I'm coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in Missouri. You don't have to worry about me. Like, don't contact the authorities or anything. I'm okay. I know it's a little unsettling given the background and just it seems kind of mysterious, but I'm fine. Don't worry about me.
Speaking of fine, Shane Jackson's in a safe room this week. Tell us why, Shane, and how.
Well, because the last time we posted this podcast, I got yelled at for my lighting being really bad. So I went to the safe room, which is what Alyssa uses as her office, whereas I get the guest bedroom to use as my half office. So I just said, hey, can I borrow your safe room for 30 minutes? And she let me for some reason. So
unbelievable. Shane also collared up this week for everybody. I mean, it's been a big week for Shane. He got in the safe room, he collared up, and LeBron won a title. Big week.
Yeah. Huge, really. I thought wearing a Lakers shirt would make me more of a bandwagon fan this time. So
yeah, you did it right.
Yeah,
you did it. You definitely did it right. Someone else who might be in a safe room or at least a safe location is Kansas football coach Les Miles. So we haven't talked on here anyway about his positive diagnosis for COVID. First question, very obvious first question. Were you guys surprised he got it? I mean, I want to preface that because I do think Les has been very cautious. I think everything I've heard, everything we've heard from him, this guy is taking it very seriously. He was not interested in getting COVID, nor should anyone be, but particularly at, age 66, coming up on 67. I think he was taking all the precautions and boom, here we go. He got it. So surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, when that news came out on Thursday afternoon, it definitely surprised me. I mean, I guess we should have learned by now that anytime someone gets it, it shouldn't be that surprising. I know It's not like a massive thing that, over half the population has got or anything like that. But obviously it's huge. It's, that's been the story of the century this year, is this pandemic. Yeah. So I guess maybe I should not have been surprised. And I don't know. I'm going to be interested to talk with him the next time that he's available. He hasn't been made available since this happened, and just kind of get an idea from him about how he thinks he might have got it and if he'd be interested to share that with us. And maybe, there's a lesson for other people that might be helpful because of this. It seems like he's doing well while he's isolating at his home. The plan right now is for him to be at that game at West Virginia on Saturday. I mean, we'll see if that happens. To me, that's not something you can just assume.
No, I was gonna ask that question as well. I mean, do you guys think he'll be there? I don't. I don't think he'll be there. I mean, number one, it's 9 days. I think they would leave on Friday, and so it'd be 9 days, kind of, after he tests positive. Maybe like by the hours, not necessarily the days, but that's 8 or 9 days. That's not very many, and you keep hearing about 14 days, and you keep hearing about guys that get it for 10 days even, and that's still neither of those numbers. So they've been pretty optimistic and pretty forthright about that from the beginning. As soon as they released that he had it, that's the plan for him to be there. But I don't think he will be. I mean, if he tests positive, and they will test Friday before they leave, before they get on the plane, they all test, because it doesn't make sense to test when you get there. It makes sense to test before you leave, because if anyone tests positive, then you just stay and you don't make the trip. So they test Friday morning or whatever it is. If he tests negative, there's no way he goes. And there's definitely, based on the limited knowledge we have of this thing, there's definitely a chance that he could still be positive in that 8 or 9 day window. So I don't think he'll be there, but they haven't backed off of that. I mean, yesterday when we talked with coordinators, they all said, hey, we're planning on him being there. So what do you guys think? Yay, nay?
I think that they just shared what they're able to share. To me, I mean, I know that they said there's really no backup plan, but to me, they absolutely have to have one. I mean, you can't just assume in a situation like this that Les will be able to be there. So, I mean, for whatever reason, they didn't want to make that public right now. Maybe they're just, kind of hoping for the best. And if they're not able to go through with that, then they'll kind of say, hey, Brent Dearman's going to serve as head coach this week, or DJ Elliott's going to serve as head coach this week, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Matt. I think it's almost more likely that he won't be there, just because, I mean, I don't know how you can just assume that he'll be in the clear by the time that you need to leave for a road game on a, Friday morning or early Friday afternoon.
Yeah, and I mean, Benton, I want you to – well, Shane, go ahead. What do you think?
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, it seems hard to believe that. And I guess the only thing I have really to compare it to is just covering high school sports. Now we've had 3 different quarantines involving area teams. And every one of those quarantines have lasted 2 weeks long from when the first positive case happened. I would imagine the NFL, the NFL does something similar. When someone tests positive for COVID, they're basically placed on IR, which is almost 3 weeks long. So it just seems hard to believe. I know there's real jobs out there who do something differently, but considering what the high school does, considering what the NFL does, it seems hard to believe that Les is going to be ready to go within 10 days.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And the only difference maybe from the high school level is the number of tests, right? Mm-hmm. KU does test 2, maybe 3, I think 3 times a week, right?
On game weeks it's 3. I think during the bye week it may have been different, just because you don't have that Saturday game that is a must that you have to find out everything about everybody involved. But on game weeks it's definitely 3 times.
So there you go. So that helps, right? I mean, not only does it help right before the game, but it helps throughout the week. You can kind of find out who's progressing, where's this guy at. Because we still don't know, right? I mean, like there is as much data as there is out there. Even the doctors still don't know definitively if this happens, then this happens. And if that happens, then this happens. I mean, there's still so much unknown about this. So maybe he'll make it. Obviously, KU would rather him be there, I would think. From the standpoint of him being the captain of the ship, as Brent Dearman called it yesterday, but also just that's another. If he doesn't go, you're playing down a man basically. You're not playing with 10 on the field, but that's one guy who has a very clear-cut list of duties on game day that those are going to have to be spread out and assigned to different people, and everybody's going to have to do a little more. So I would think they would want him there. Ben, you wrote a story about this week from Monday. We basically got the opportunity, because Les is out of commission right now, to talk to the coordinators this week, and literally all of them. Special teams coordinator Jonathan Wallace, recruiting coordinator Josh Ergel, offensive coordinator Dearman, and defensive coordinator DJ Elliott. And it was cool. 10 minutes or so with each. Really cool to hear some different insights, different perspectives, different answers. Frankly, Brent Dearman comes out there and says, hey, Miles Kendrick's starting for us at quarterback this week. I think if that was a Les press conference, we wouldn't have heard that answer. And that's not knocking anybody or saying right or wrong. I think it just was a different perspective. And Dearman was like, why wouldn't I tell you? So maybe an experience there, maybe oversharing, but I like it. And I know Benton did too. I think that getting back to the original question, though, give us a little insight on what those guys talked about life without Les being like.
Well, I mean, time after time you heard, players said it too in the afternoon, not just the coordinators that we talked with, like just everything in this world as we're experiencing right now talking to each other is just different because of the pandemic. So, I mean, now everybody's used to, having Zoom meetings. And I mean, that's all that the KU football program could do for a long period. Once spring football got shut down, they were still meeting throughout the end of that semester, and I mean, that was the only way they were allowed to do so, was over video calls. So in one way, it didn't seem that out of the norm, but just because things like this have kind of become the norm in 2020. So I think that probably made it a lot easier to navigate. The one thing that did seem different, I think Dearman mentioned, that's when he brought up the captain of the ship isn't here, right? When you're walking around the facility and you just don't see him, when you walk past his office or in the hallways or during a practice when, he's not out there on the field kind of watching from behind the offense. That's totally different when that's the guy who's in charge of your program, and he's absent. So
the reason you're there. I mean, the guy that
yeah,
hired you, right? Like it's got to be a little eerie, I would think. I mean, he's not dying, he's not dead. Like, it's not total catastrophe, but just not having him around when you're used to him being around, I would think would feel way weird. Maybe not when you get into this tunnel vision of practice and you're focusing on your position group and things like that. But otherwise, I would think it would definitely feel weird.
And I think DJ Elliott brought up an interesting point. Like the players kind of seemed to rally around that. He said that they had a really, excellent practice on Thursday after finding out that news. I mean, the players think so highly of Les Miles that that's not surprising to hear. I mean, obviously they want their coach to recover and be back as soon as possible, but just the idea that, he's going through this, I think it seemed like kind of a motivating and rallying point as they're coming off of this bye.
Yeah, I think what was interesting too was that, kind of getting back to the first question we brought up here, they said there is no alternative plan, right? You mentioned that already. There is no, if Les doesn't make the trip to West Virginia, this is the guy who will be the interim coach, even if it's just for a week. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Maybe they didn't feel like they needed to get to that last week, and it's only Tuesday this week, so they can still talk about it if need be, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. But the one hint, right? The one hint that we got was, while all these guys talked to us during Les's normal, like, local media presser, DJ Elliott jumped on the Big 12 call in Les's spot. So you think there's anything to read into that? I mean, I did a blog last week about the possible options. And Elliott has the most, Power 5 experience on that staff, kind of by a long shot. So it makes a little bit of sense, especially with the coordinator tag. I mean, he's already leading something there. But he's also never been a head coach. And so that's kind of interesting to me. I would think you would want someone who's done that, even just for a week, but maybe not. But do you think that was a hint? Do you think that was a tell? Like, he took that job, so if somebody has to on Saturday, to be him?
Yeah, I kind of wondered the same thing. Just the fact that DJ Elliott was the one who was taking those questions on the Big 12 teleconference, that might end up being the case. I also thought we should probably point out, as we're having this discussion on Tuesday afternoon, I'm certain they know what the plan is.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they just didn't want to share it on Monday morning. Maybe it was being finalized on Monday morning. I think Dearman said while he was talking to us, I think he said that's something the higher ups are probably figuring out right now.
Sure.
So I'm sure that they know what the plan is moving forward.
Also, if your hope is that he's coming back, then you don't want to project this. Well, hey, if he doesn't, I mean, they've been saying all along he is, so they're going to stick with that. And then obviously if he doesn't, or he can't make the trip, well, yeah, they'll have something in place. But why publicize it? Why make a deal out of it if it's maybe, hopefully, in your opinion, going to be a non-issue, right? So I don't know. Do you think that, Shane? I mean, the two guys, really three with coaching experience, head coaching experience, are Dearman at Bethel, and then Emmett Jones in the high school ranks in Texas, but at some pretty big schools, and then Josh Ergel as well, who just maybe 1 or 2 years at a lower level. So, I mean, if you had to pick, let's say you're gosh, I don't even know who makes that pick. Les, I guess, right? Let's say you're Les Miles in your safe room there. Who do you like for that role, even for just 1 week?
Yeah, I mean, I read your blog when you posted it, and I thought it was interesting the way they go about it. I almost think I would go DJ Elliott route, though, even though you mentioned the lack of head coaching experience there. But for me, I mean, I think you want Dearman calling plays. You want him focused on that aspect of the offense, and the offense has not really hit its full potential just yet. That I think you'd almost rather him just stay put and keep doing what he's doing, and whereas maybe you can give more of a general manager type of role for DJ Elliott on a game day basis, and he can trust other guys. Hey, this is what we're going to call on defense. Just considering the complexity of calling an offense or calling Dearman's offense, I think I'd rather almost him focus solely on that still.
Yeah, odds are too it's bits and pieces, right? I mean, like, ultimately somebody would have to have the final say on that day, and so they'd want to designate that. But I would imagine as the game goes on, pregame, middle of the game, halftime, et cetera, it's probably a collective effort. That's what I would think. But yeah, that's definitely interesting. I think that's a tell, though. I think that's probably the way they're leaning. So let's get into the coordinators, though, a little bit. Real quick, just want to kind of talk about the main takeaway, Benton, that you had from each guy. And Shane, you can chime in on anything as well. It's always great to talk to Dearman. I mean, and it was particularly great this year and at this time because this offense is not going well right now. And it's one thing to ask Les that and to keep asking him about it and what's going on and why, but this is Dearman's thing and it's his offense and he's the architect of it and he knows it better than anyone. So it was an opportunity for us to get some insight at a good time. I mean, I'd probably rather have talked to him this week than before the season because, it would have been great before the season, but this is when there are things to really answer. And it'd be great moving forward if we could continue to get him. I don't know if that'll happen. Traditionally speaking, in the Les Miles world, that doesn't happen. But where there's hope is what they say, right? So anyway, what was your number one takeaway from talking to him and getting a little insight on not only where the offense is at, but just what he thinks about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, just overall, I like that he was just truthful and upfront about it. Like, they're not a good passing team right now. They're not a good running team right now. They're not a good anything team right now offensively. I mean, he didn't try to, kind of sugarcoat it or anything like that. I mean, he was pretty upfront, like this offense is struggling and there's more than one issue. There's issues all over the place. And I mean, just the fact that he kind of talked about, using the bye week as kind of trying to figure out like, what are we really good at? So this is their second bye week, but I feel like also now they probably have a much better idea of where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are because they've faced two Big 12 teams already, right, not just a Coastal Carolina team. So to me, that's probably some reason for hope if you're a KU fan is that, you had this extra time where coaches were able to kind of like maybe go away from some of the weaknesses and kind of figure out where you've been struggling most. I also enjoyed the fact that he was kind of upfront, like you mentioned earlier about Miles Kendrick. Hey, Miles Kendrick is our starter. This is our guy this week. Doesn't mean he's going to be the guy next week. But he also, I like the way he phrased it. It's not only, I mean, it's like no one has won this job. No one has lost this job. No one has won this job. Yeah. It's just like they haven't found a path with that. I mean, that's one of the many issues. But I did like his approach that, Miles Kendrick is going to be the guy this week. And, we're going to tell him that ahead of time. We're going to support him publicly ahead of time. And, maybe that helps his confidence a little bit going into a game that you really need. I mean, you're running out of winnable games on this schedule.
Yeah, well, and he also said flat out that, I'd prefer to go with one guy and stick with him. And we kind of saw that last year. And I mean, I think anybody paying attention would have known that already, but it's good to hear it, reinforce it. We've heard Les say that would be his preference as well. So, putting those pieces together, what a golden opportunity for Miles Kendrick right now. I mean, you got McVitie who is back, but and Dearman did say he's full go, but he's missed time with injury. Mm-hmm. And you got Jalen Daniels, who's maybe not back all the way yet either with injury. So you got one healthy quarterback, and he's getting an opportunity to do something he hasn't done this year, and that's start a game. And if he can get this offense moving and show, hey, give me this opportunity and I'll take us where we need to go, what a chance for him, and it doesn't mean it's going to go well, and it doesn't mean they couldn't change their mind. I mean, he could have a good half and they could still throw McVitie back in there for whatever reason. But I get the feeling that they wouldn't. And I really think that if Kendrick can show something explosive, something efficient, something and just consistent, I think there's a real good chance he could be playing for the job and to keep it for the rest of the season. And what a great opportunity.
Yeah, and Shane, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Miles Kendrick have basically the best passing play from any KU quarterback so far this season? I think he hit Kwame Lassiter for maybe 26 or 27 yards in that Coastal game. But, I mean, just Jalen Daniels, he's young. He doesn't have the experience. He's getting experience when he's able to play. McVitie got hurt in the third quarter of that opener. So there's since there's been no consistency, Miles Kendrick right now is leading the team in like every passing category imaginable. But also, just to me, even though he has a couple of interceptions, it seems like, I know it's not like saying some great thing about him that he's the best quarterback of these three, but to me, it clearly is him so far, just based on what we've seen.
It's such an incredible stat, too, to not have started a game and to be leading in all the categories. That just shows what a mess it is, and Dearman addressed that. What do you got, Shane?
No, I was just saying, I think you guys have mentioned already, but I think it was interesting that he said nobody had really won the job. I think that was pretty telling. And because they've all had their moments at some point this year that were like, hey, just give this guy the shot the rest of the way. But the fact that he's come out and said, hey, nobody's won the job through 3 games, I think is pretty telling. And it speaks to, again, why this was a competition going into the year.
Yeah, right, and still is, and for who knows how long. DJ Elliott, what jumped out there on the defensive side of things, Ben?
Well, I think that I wasn't surprised that one of the things he brought up was just how many young guys they're playing. And I mean, we all know that. We all know it's tough to, maybe thrive defensively when you've got young guys in the secondary and, young guys at linebacker. And I mean, every once in a while you got a young guy right there at nose tackle in Dejon Terry. And I know that's a guy they like too, but
Jeremy Robinson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they're all over the field.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. To me, I felt like I didn't learn a lot about what the defense is going through from talking to Elliott yesterday. And that makes sense. I think coaches, especially in those forums, don't really like to get into like, well, here are our biggest weaknesses. Because, I mean, I don't understand that approach necessarily, because to me, if you say it in an interview, it's not like you're revealing something that, some coach on an opposing staff hasn't already seen 100 times.
Well, it's on tape, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Like that's the thing. Those guys watching the tape,
yeah.
They see it way, way clearer than we can even hear it. So
yeah. So I probably would have liked to have got kind of some more details about like what really are the consistent issues for this defense that a coach would see that that I as a reporter definitely would not see. I know, even like rewatching highlights and that type of stuff. So I don't know. I feel like I didn't learn a whole ton, except that they like their younger players, and this maybe that's the takeaway, right? Is that like this is a year to develop those younger guys so that they are more effective in years to come.
And facts are facts, right? I mean, you can't really argue with that, and at least they're doing it. If you get nothing else out of this season, at least maybe you do get that, and that's something you can put your hat on and feel good about. Maybe, hopefully, maybe.
I thought it was interesting. He shared some tidbits that were interesting, at least. I mean, he not telling Nick Channel he was starting until like 5 or 10 minutes before the game. The whole Dejon Terry's basketball background I wasn't very familiar with because I don't really follow recruiting too closely, but I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, it does seem like they're confident in the fact that this young team has potential, and he seemed somewhat pleased with how they performed for a little bit there in terms of yardage. He said I think the third game got away for their defense a little bit, but I mean, you can tell that he has a little bit more reasons to be optimistic on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that the deal is everything he said would be totally viable if KU fans hadn't just seen it for the last 10, 11 years. I mean, it's been a constant issue of, well, let's get the young guys some experience. And then, hey, when they get their turn as juniors and seniors, they're going to be, and it just hasn't panned out that way. Some guys have left. Some guys haven't panned out. Some guys haven't had 3, 4, 5 years to use because they've been JUCO guys. And so you've continued to hear that, and you're hearing it again. So it kind of in one and out the other. But the reality is everything that he's saying is logical. And I agree, Ben. It would have been great to get some more insight. I thought it was interesting him talking about the takeaways. I mean, at the very end of that, I basically said, what's the biggest thing you're looking at that takes this defense to the next level, whether that's a high level or not, notwithstanding. I mean, just makes progress. What's the next step? And he immediately went to takeaways. I mean, they didn't have very many last year. They need more, and they don't have what do they have, 3 this year? Is that what it was?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think that it's a low number. I think
Yeah.
three does sound right.
So, I mean, what coach isn't going to tell you they want more takeaways, right? But the point is not that that's something they want. It's the fact that that's what they really sounded like they emphasized during this bye week, figuring out ways to put guys in positions to do that, ways to get through to the guys that this has got to happen. We've got to start taking the ball away, because that too, if we give our offense more opportunities, that can help our offense get going and blah, blah, blah. You've heard it all. So I thought that was at least interesting, not necessarily from a blow your mind big picture thing, but just the idea of, what are you working on right now? Oh, okay, that's it. Good. Well, cool. Let's see what happens. So the other two, either of those guys, anything jump out there? Special teams coordinator Jonathan Wallace, young dude, obviously comes from a talented background with his life at Auburn. This is a totally different world. I think he's kept saying he's happy to be here. He believes in this place. He's proud of it, and he thinks they have what they need to get this thing going. What else is he going to say, though, right? I mean, you can't tell me that KU and Auburn are in any way similar right now. So I didn't expect a great deal from him, but, it's still interesting to hear. Anything jump out special teams-wise? And if not, that's okay.
Yeah, not for me, special teams-wise. I think I was maybe a little bit more interested in just what he thought about the running backs and kind of the idea of using Puka and Belton together. And, I mean, he obviously mentioned that is something that they like to do and have done a little bit. But I mean, it kind of goes back to what coaches aren't going to reveal too much about, like game plans and strategy in those settings.
Sure. Yeah. Shane?
No, yeah. I mean, the two backs being on the field at the same time is something we've talked about before. And he mentioned how that's, obviously it causes, problems for opposing defenses. And he mentioned that he thought that was a good move. And I think even Dearman earlier in the press conference had said something about how they have to figure out ways to get Puka the ball in different ways than just handing the ball, which is something we've talked about obviously for a few weeks now. So I mean, a combination of those two I thought was somewhat interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think just the bye week and the time away kind of maybe rotted some portion of my brain, because I was just looking back at the defensive stats, and this team has no interceptions and no fumble recovery. So I thought we should definitely point that out.
So that's not 3.
So that's not 3. That's actually 3 less than that. I think I just I went out of town with my family last weekend since there wasn't a game. I was on that Airbnb high, and I just totally forgot that, no, this defense has 0 takeaways. So I thought we should definitely correct that before we got too far down another road.
Bless you. That was good. That was really good. Because 3 is not a lot, but it's way more than 0.
They'd love to be at 3 right now.
Yeah. One other thing I thought, that kind of thinking back about Dearman, I asked him about the O-line and what they can do there. And obviously he's not the O-line coach, but it's a huge part of his offense. And what I thought was cool was that he said, what did he say? The red Staples button. He's not a fan of hitting that red Staples panic button. I like that. I mean, maybe it is time to panic, and maybe they should do wholesale changes on the O-line, and maybe they are. I mean, who knows? It obviously hasn't gone well the first few weeks, but philosophically speaking, I like that your offensive coordinator's in that mindset of, I don't want to panic every time something doesn't go well or every time we don't do something well. I want to just bring it down to its simplest form and focus on what do we do well, and let's do more of that, and let's do it better. And again, very, very basic stuff. This isn't only happening at Kansas. People have been doing this for years and are doing it across the country right now. But the O-line's a problem, and I thought it was cool to hear that his perspective on that is, we don't need to blow guys up and move the center to left tackle and move the left guard to right tackle and go crazy. I mean, we just need to focus on putting them in a spot where, what can you do well, and let's do that. And we'll see if it happens. We'll see if it helps. We'll see if it works. But at least that's a good philosophy from my perspective. Urgel, recruiting coordinator, tight ends coach. We didn't talk any tight ends with him, I don't think. Jack Luavasa and Big James did not come up, did they?
For some reason, tight ends and fullbacks did not come up
right
in that 10 minutes with Urgel.
Anything
obviously
about,
recruiting. Yeah, obviously recruiting did, and it's one of those things where coaches can't get into specifics of recruiting, obviously, until guys are signed. But he did seem very optimistic about this 2021 class, which, as a recruiting coordinator, obviously, of course, he's always going to be positive, regardless. But and I mean, that was just a few days removed from them, losing a commitment, one of the biggest commitments in this class. But he obviously doesn't reference that, nor would he want to in that setting.
We can.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. But I think just the sheer numbers and the fact that it's going to be all high school guys again is something that they're excited about.
Yeah, I mean, look, he called them game changers in that class. He called them guys they're really excited about. They've got to be excited about them. And more important than anything, I think both of us, or all three of us, have talked about this on the phone at some point or another. They have to hang on to them. I mean, that's the deal right now. Wins and losses, yeah, you'd like to get a win or two the rest of the way. But even if you go 0-10, you go 0-10, and that's where it's headed right now. That's what it looks like is most likely. So the focus for this team and for these coaches the rest of the way has to be on that recruiting class. They have to hang on to those guys, whatever that means, however they have to spin it, however they have to preach, however they have to convince these guys that this is still the place you want to be and this is still an opportunity for you, and we still want you and we still need you. In some ways that shouldn't be hard. When you go 0-10, there's a lot of needs. But that's the most important thing for this program by far right now, in my opinion, way more than winning a game. Because if more guys like Keon Coleman start jumping ship and KU, remember these guys sign in December now, right? I mean, majority of them across the country. So if KU loses another handful of these guys or half of these guys, what they'll be replacing them with is total leftovers at that point. And doing that is not going to help you get out of this hole. It's not going to excite your fan base. It may force your hand in some spots where you feel like you have to go the JUCO route to fill a couple of those, and nobody's going to be excited about that either. So to me, that's by far the most important thing that is still to play for in this season. And that's obviously not happening on Saturdays. That's happening with phone calls and mailings and texts and things like that. But it can happen on Saturday.
Old boy said mailings.
Yeah. Well, they send out stuff left and right. You see it all over Twitter, right? These kids love getting it. I don't know why. I mean, I hate junk mail, and maybe that's not junk mail to them, but those kids posted on Twitter like it's like they just got a gift certificate to I don't know what I'm gonna say here. Some amazing Q39 or something, some awesome barbecue joint. But yeah, I mean, that can happen on Saturdays too, because the point is the way you hang on to them. I don't think it's by coaches saying, "Hey, we love you, we need you." You already got their commitment. What it is now is don't go get beat 47-7. I mean, or 47-14 or whatever it is. I mean, you've got to show these guys that they're going to come here to make the product better. But when they get here, they're not going to be in a position to get their face beat in week after week, because no one wants that. So it has to happen on Saturdays some, and that's the outcome. You could be down 31-0 at halftime and the game's over and everyone knows it, but you damn sure better be in that locker room convincing these guys that we've got to go win the second half. And that's not so Les Miles can come in here and tell the media, well, we won the second half. No one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear that. But if you can win that second half, 21-7, then you lost 38-21, that's not going to hurt that recruiting bottom line as much as a 47-7 loss does. So I know I rambled there, but that's by far the biggest thing we got going on with this team right now. I mean, more so than the quarterback, more so than the offense, more so than anything, wins and losses. It's the 2021 class. Can they hang on to it? And they've got to do it for basically less than 2 more months right now. We got maybe 5 more minutes left here. Anything you want to get to? Shane, you want to tell us a little about West Virginia, since you are the resident West Virginia Mountaineers guru?
Well, I only did one blog on West Virginia, so that makes
so far. You're probably going to do 8.
Is 2-1, and I think we're probably better than what people may have thought originally before the season. I think they may have been preseason wise down towards the bottom, but beating
right?
Yeah, beating Baylor certainly makes it seem like they're not necessarily a winnable game for Kansas. I think they're 22.5-point favorites against Kansas this weekend. And their defense is legit. I mean, they're statistically the best defense in the Big 12 right now through 3 games. PFF-wise, they grade out as one of the better defenses in the country. So I think defensively it's going to be a problem for Kansas, especially since they struggle right now offensively and getting the ball through the air and having success through the air. So that tends to be, I think, the biggest mismatch in this game.
Yeah, I'm going back to Geno Smith and Tavon Austin and those guys that West Virginia's had, but I've had some trips to Morgantown, and I love it. It's my favorite trip in the Big 12. Austin's right there too, but boy, I've watched some absolute lopsided mismatches in that stadium, and I'm sure, Benton, you have too. It's hard to imagine that, you know, on paper, yeah, this one might have been winnable looking at the season in August. And now here we are, and it's hard to even fathom that it could be winnable. I think the goal has to be just go play better, just go perform better, score more than 14 points, and be in the game and be a factor. Make them feel you, regardless of whether you win or lose. That's kind of how it feels. I mean, you know, it's baby steps at this point. Ben, what are your thoughts on this game? I mean, do you think it's winnable? Do you think? I mean, I know they're going to go out there thinking they can win it, but oof.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like we saw with more consistency last year, kind of examples of KU competing.
Yeah.
Even if they ultimately ended up losing. I mean, obviously that Texas kind of shootout comes to mind, but
sure.
But that, you know, that was more of an anomaly. They played well at Iowa State and made that kind of interesting. They that home game with West Virginia that they ultimately lost was one that they at least were somewhat competitive in, but we haven't seen that this year. You know, we haven't seen KU truly be competitive yet. So I mean, just doing that alone, and like you said, that's not the approach they're taking, and that's not
right.
what fans want to hear. Like, oh boy, I hope we lose by 10 at West Virginia. But
victory.
I mean, that would be progress for where that team's at right now. So I think you just have to keep building on what you've done so far, and you haven't done a lot. So I mean, you have to really make some leaps and bounds to get competitive and, you know, make other teams respect you. So that's kind of where we're at 3 games into a 10-game season, and I mean, there's so much work to do, and you kind of wonder at any point, are they going to make a jump defensively, a jump offensively, because obviously they need to kind of, you know, to win a game or two. I mean, I think before the season started, me and Shane were super optimistic about that 2-8 season, but I mean, it's two's going to be hard to come by in these next 7 games. So they just have to keep making progress. And Tate, you brought it up, I think last week, and then obviously today, like you have to, because of the recruiting situation. You can't lose these guys that you're planning on bringing in to build this program up.
Did I do that rant last week? Did I?
I don't think it was the exact rant.
Okay, good.
I think you brought it up, and then, you know, the next day, you know, Keon Coleman, I think, was.
Oh, that's right.
So maybe you inspired him to piece out on this program.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he listened to our podcast and he's like, "This Matt Tate guy, I like the way he thinks."
It was National Podcast Day, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's a big loss, but one they can overcome. I really think that. I mean, if they can hold the rest of that class together, look, Keon Coleman picked KU over Oklahoma. I mean, this is a big-time talent for sure, but he still hasn't done anything yet either, you know. And so you can't dwell on it is what I'm getting at. You'd rather have him than not, but if you can hold the rest of that class together, you take it and do the best you can with that and feel good about it. So it'll be really interesting. It's fun to get back to the games. Who knows what's going to happen the rest of the way with COVID. So they technically, as of today, are out of bye weeks, but they could easily have another one or 2 or 10.
No, they have another bye week.
Do they?
Yeah. It's because of the Big 12 laid it out this way. Everybody gets 3 bye weeks.
Is that at the end?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I think they're playing 4 straight weeks, and then they have another bye week.
Oh, wow.
So, like, they obviously play this week at West Virginia, then they're at K-State, then they're back home for Iowa State on Halloween, and then there's one more game right after that, and then there's a bye week.
So another
Yeah.
opportunity for you to get an assistant coach fired.
Oh, that's right. As is tradition.
Vacation.
I mean, yeah, we should. Yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about it and joked about it a lot, but I don't know if we've ever mentioned it on
I
the
don't know if you
podcast.
have.
So each of the past 2 years, during a KU bye week, I took a vacation with my family. And while I was on vacation, each of those times, an offensive coordinator was fired.
Incredible.
So first it was Doug Meacham. I was in Arizona for that. And last year it was Les Kinning. Actually, I think I was in Arizona for that too. So, well, as long as I don't go to Arizona,
That's the clear.
everybody's fine.
That's the clear point here. You will have a letter at your house tonight from Brent Dearman saying, "No trip to Arizona." It won't be from him. It'll be like a government letter that's like, travel ban, Arizona,
Yeah, exactly.
borders not passable, do not go.
Security risk.
Right, yeah. But I think he made it through this week, so congratulations to you for going 1 for 3 here. I had to feel good to break the streak. And then we've got a lot of football the rest of the week to cover. KU's grinding ahead, and we'll see if they get Les Miles back. It'll be really interesting to find out. The goal here will be to find out on Friday and let you guys know before you flip on the television Saturday morning at 11 a.m. if that's what you do. If you're out raking leaves, respect. But then they play at K-State 11 a.m. the following weekend.
Yeah.
So we're back, baby. We're back. 11 a.m. is raging forward again with the KU football official time start. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. But what else are you going to do? So in addition to that, Big Ten, Pac-12, they'll be starting here fairly soon. So that'll get interesting. And then, of course, basketball starting. Official practice begins this week. KU's still trying to finalize their schedule for hoops. But it looks like it'll start in Orlando that last week of November. And they'll play maybe 3 or 4 games while they're down there and then come home and figure it out from there. So I don't know that that'll be out anytime real soon, but it's got to come sooner than later. So there's a lot of KU stuff happening. Soccer and volleyball continuing as well. And then, of course, you can read all about West Virginia as well here at our site this week. Shane's got it.
That's right.
Any final thoughts, Shane, before we get out of here?
Absolutely none.
Good.
No thoughts whatsoever.
Get out of the safe room, man. You survived it. I hope you can get out. I hope it's not like that. What do they call that? Breakout room or something? What is that?
Oh, that's a little game that people play back when the real world existed.
Back when you could go in public, right? Yeah. Interesting.
We'll probably do a breakout over Zoom now, though.
That'd be fun. Yeah. I was in Honolulu covering KU Indiana a couple years ago, and Nick Krug and I got an Uber from the hotel to the arena or whatever. And this guy, our Uber driver, was a big breakout guy. Is that what it's called? Breakout
Room, I think, right?
Breakout room? Yeah, either way. He is a big fan of that. But he was not just a fan of like going to the venue and doing it. His dream, big, bold, bright lights, was to make mobile versions of it. And we were like, shining him on and saying, oh, that sounds interesting. So he's driving with one hand, like Kramer driving the bus at Seinfeld, and he reaches back behind him in this like console, and he's like, here you go, check this out. And he hands this contraption to Nick, and it's this little like box that you have to like pull levers and there's a key in it or something, and that's the next clue that gets you to your next location. And oh my gosh, he was so into it, and I was just on my phone over here staring out the window making Nick just deal with the entire interaction because it was, I don't know, I haven't heard about it. I don't know if he got it off the ground. Maybe it's big in Honolulu, but I'll never forget that. So Shane, I hope you get out of there safely. Ben, I hope you get out of there safely from your undisclosed location in Missouri. Maybe you already started traveling to West Virginia, just one state at a time, knocking off a day at a time this week. I don't know. But that's your KU Sports Hour for today. For Shane Jackson and Benton Smith, I'm Matt Tate. We'll talk to you guys again next week, and we'll have some more KU football to talk about for better or for worse. Thanks for checking out this episode, and take care of yourselves, everyone.